Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your horoscopes for the month of April 2019. So, this is the Sun and Rising sign horoscope for Sagittarius. Let's go ahead and have a look. So, the thing that I'm doing this month is I am breaking the transits up into thematic segments. The main reason for this is that there's a lot of transits happening simultaneously. So, usually I would take my software and guide you through each individual transit, but instead of doing that, I'm just going to break things up thematically. So, and I'll point out dates, obviously, but like I said, I'm not going to walk you through each thing on my software program because I think it'd end up making it more jumbled than anything. Everything's happening in clusters. So, first of all, you'll see, for example, that the main thing that I'm focusing on this month is the new moon cycle in Aries, which starts in your fifth house, and the ruler of which is Mars in your seventh house of relationships. Later in the month, on between the 19th and first of all, the new moon is on April 5th. So early new moon in the month in Aries in your fifth house, with the ruler of the new moon being Mars in your seventh house of relationships. So I'll break that down in a second, but this new moon cycle is focused on the house of good fortune, and it's a house that was traditionally related to auspicious things that you are destined to receive or experience. For example, if you were to go into town to get some groceries and you ran into someone who owed you some money and they just gave you the money, that would be a moment of good fortune. So the fifth house was traditionally associated with anything that might be a part of your karma in life that is a product of joy and happiness, or creativity. It's related to the arts. It's related to children and pregnancy. Any kind of good fortune and in life that, again, may come to you somehow. So a new moon in the fifth house is auspicious. It's generally a new moon cycle that would announce things like a creative, celebratory, fun, more uplifting kind of month. Things that you do that are going to be more joyous and exciting. It can also have something to do with children. Some new cycle of activity starting with your children can sometimes announce the birth of a child or pregnancy. The fifth house new moon can also indicate that you're getting involved with new activities for the sake of pleasure, recreation, creativity, or fun. So like I said, it's for all intents and purposes, it's a pretty good moon cycle for Sagittarians this month. But we have to look at the dispositor, and that's Mars. Aries Mars new moon cycle is initiating something new. It's very powerful. It's very assertive. And Mars is landing in your seventh house of relationships. And Mars gradually, over the course of the next weeks, will be moving into an opposition with your ruling planet Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius in your first house. So this new moon cycle, though it looks very auspicious, and it may indeed specifically bring benefits through partners or through love or through relationships or through sexuality. It may have an emphasis on those topics as well and may be kind of joyous and uplifting. It will also eventually engage you in a kind of oppositional dialogue, conflict, or confrontation with others or with whoever you're in relationship with, maybe your children or maybe a lover or maybe friends. But the point is that you want to be a little bit careful because, again, whatever is getting started, it feels really assertive and bold and maybe sort of spontaneous and exciting. But there will be consequences later. There will be something more of a moment of dynamic polarity and tension that comes in relationships as a result later. We can see this because the full moon on April 19th is in Libra, which is in your 11th house of friends and groups, and represents a kind of moment of karmic reckoning, of karmic balancing, and again, especially in relationships. So that's now underlying all of this, the full moon in Libra in your 11th house, or my drawing is awful. We'll try to draw another moon here. The full moon in Libra on the 19th, right, will be making squares to Saturn and Pluto in your second house, while the Sun will also eventually engage in squares after the new moon between I want to say the 10th and 13th of April. Will also be engaging in squares to Saturn and Pluto. So the moon cycle is definitely getting involved with some harder aspects to south node of the moon, Pluto, and Saturn in the house of money, resources, and finances. So I'm a little concerned about what looks like a fun start to the month, very auspicious, beneficial, maybe benefits in business relationships or with finances or money. But there's also kind of potential for conflict to develop a little bit later in relationships, and potentially with regard to money or finances or jobs or work or share of equal responsibilities or duties in business or domestic life, like who's paying for what, or is the share of responsibilities even, etc. Now, the other thing is that so let me refresh on that just so you remember. April 5th, new moon in Aries in the 5th house. Looks really nice, good, powerful, exciting, auspicious, creative, but it's got an underlying Mars energy. Mars is in your 7th house of relationships, maybe bringing good things there, but also maybe eventually bringing up some conflicts in relationships. They could be about beliefs or ideas or different ways of seeing or doing things. And there eventually is going to be a need for some kind of fairness, balance, diplomacy, tact with the full moon in Libra and underlying issues around money or finances or maybe even business related matters. So that's the general outline of the month through the moon cycle. The full moon comes on the 19th. Now, the other major theme that's really interesting, and it's hard to know exactly how to synthesize it together with everything we've started with, is the transits of Mercury and Venus through the 4th house of home, family, parents, land, family karma. These planets are moving through the 4th house, Venus and Mercury, into conjunction with Neptune, and then they're making squares to your ruling planet, Jupiter. So we also have a very deep focus this month on relationships, on the home life or the domestic life. You can see Venus in the home life, in the home area of the chart, and Mercury getting involved with Neptune on April 2nd. Mercury will conjoin Neptune by April 10th. Venus will conjoin Neptune. Mercury will then square Jupiter by April 12th. Venus will square Jupiter by April 15th. So you've got this kind of flow of movements in the 4th house together with Neptune, and then simultaneous squares to Jupiter in the 1st. What does that mean? Well, the 1st house is you. That's your house. That's your health. That's your vitality. That's your character. That's your chi. That the 1st house is you at the steering wheel of the ship, and you're really there right now. It's a big year for Sagittarians with Jupiter in the 1st house, kind of a year of gaining confidence, starting over. Sometimes a little too much self-indulgence in a Jupiter year, but typically a year of auspicious new beginnings. And Venus and Mercury getting involved with Neptune in the 4th house are therefore bringing up deeper, more deeply seated emotional issues and maybe spiritual issues, religious issues, psychological dynamics around home, family relationships. And so it could be a time, for example, where you are taking some very big personal growth steps in your life relative to the topics of home and family. It could also be that you are working through trying to sort out the difference between truth and fantasy in relation to family and personal identity. So sometimes we tell ourselves all kinds of stories about, family life. When we don't have a family, we imagine it'll make us happy. When we do have a family, we often complain and imagine that the real us is somewhere else once I get a divorce and find someone new, or if once my kids are gone, or whatever, right? So issues around identity, questions, deeper questions about identity and family are very important this month. However, here's the other thing to consider. All of these planets moving in conjunction with Neptune in the fourth house bring up the difference between truth and illusion in the home and family. And then the squares to Jupiter signal that these issues that you're looking at in home and family are going to come into some kind of direct question or conflict with you and your sense of who you are. Now, the square to Jupiter is ultimately not a bad thing in astrology because Jupiter is very beneficial and bestows or grants blessings. So something good may come out of whatever exploring you're doing this month around who am I in relation to home and family matters. There could be some really positive changes around home and family or domestic issues in general, and there could be gain or growth associated with those things. But I would be very careful because with Neptune in the mix, sometimes whatever growth we're imagining or whatever we're trying to add or whatever we're trying to do around home and family, we need to be very careful that we're not becoming too idealistic or wrapped up in some kind of fantasy. So those are questions that exist around identity and home and family this month as well. And like I said, that's really strong the first half of the month. So these are the main transits that I'm looking at for Sagittarians. Between the 20th and 23rd, the Sun will conjoin with Uranus, which may be a somewhat disruptive, but also illuminating moment, a moment of greater clarification. So I like that one. It's very brief. And 19th to 23rd, Mercury and Venus will get in a conjunction with Chiron and Aries, potential for some healing, learning, growth, a more honest conversation or dialogue in relationships may be very healing. And again, if you have kids, this month could be a very big month in terms of your kids. Like everything that I've talked about could somehow be applied to the topic of your children or relationship with children. So that's what I've got for you this month. I hope that this was interesting. Let me know how the month goes, and I'll look forward to connecting with you Sagittarians again in May. Take care. Bye.